And that is, not a surprise because it does mirror Courtney Love introducing, Kurt Cobain to using heroin daily. And there's loads of evidence on Courtney Love that she was, a kind of a pawn of U.S. intelligence. She was a prostitute at about 15 years old, and this came out in several mainstream books. She admitted being part of the white slave trade in Asian countries at about 16 years old. And so she and her own biological father said he accidentally introduced her to an undercover CIA agent named O'Leary. And I kind of found backup for what he said about that, and found the sources that say yes, this guy on his deathbed actually admitted he has been working for the CIA when he was sleeping with a 17-year-old Courtney Love, taking her into London, having helping her distribute acid, LSD, like candy. She brought a thousand hits of acid into London and started giving it out to everyone, and totally disrupted the music scene around Britain, where she was with Adam and the Ants. I forget his name. Adam Ant and the whatever his last name is, and Flock. The different up and coming British bands she disrupted. She slept with the drummer for the Pogues and nearly broke up their marriage. She caused all kinds of turmoil at 17 years old, being escorted by a undercover CIA agent with tons of drugs. And she went and she duplicated this throughout the United States. She would go to top music scenes and just hand out all different kinds of drugs, painkillers, everything. She had an unlimited amount of drugs that she would give out, and in all these music scenes, getting people hooked on painkillers, getting people hooked on all kinds of things, and causing all kinds of disruption, to the point that she ended up doing it in Seattle and really disrupting things there, when that was a major like leftist activist community, plus a big time alternative music community. And she finally like topped things off by killing the star of the Seattle community, Kurt Cobain, because she first got him just so the method, the modus operandi is they get these undercover agents close to these musicians, manipulate them to start promoting drugs, which and then when these musicians start sobering up and start threaten to promote both sobriety and more leftist activism, they're done away with. This happened with Jimi Hendrix when he started promoting the Black Panthers in his last year of life. He dedicated his last album to the Black Panthers, and his manager was Mike Jeffrey, who admitted being working for MI6 before he inserted himself into Jimi Hendrix's life. And so, it was a parallel with that to Tupac's life, because within 48 hours of Jimi Hendrix firing Mike Jeffrey, he's dead. And he'd been trying to fire him for a long time, but he was, contractually stuck with him for a while. And so Tupac was contractually stuck with Death Row Records, which Russell Poole basically showed was a U.S. intelligence front company, because there was dozens of police officers at all levels of Death Row Records. And Russell Poole said he didn't know what they were doing there. He asked his superiors, and he said, you can call them covert agents. So within 48 hours of Tupac, or so, a few days within Tupac of firing a guy who was the lawyer for Death Row Records, forgot his name now all of a sudden, but he was the white lawyer for Death Row Records, was the real owner of Death Row Records. He died. And similar to that, of course, soon 48 hours within of Hendrix firing Mike Jeffrey, he's dead. And the best evidence showed lots of foul play from the ambulance drivers who came there, and the doctor saying he doesn't really know why he died. And the final verdict on Jimi Hendrix was not what everyone thinks, that he overdosed on some drug. Is that they just don't know why he died. They can't understand. They had no final verdict on he shouldn't have died, they said. So there's a lot, these are some of the things that are happening to these people, these musicians, that they're kind of manipulated to promote the drugs. And when they start sobering up, they're done away with when they start.
So there's only about 5 minutes left, John, and I've got quite a few questions about Courtney and Kurt then.
Sure.
I've watched this documentary that was put out, I think, by a private investigator, he said, that Courtney hired, who found out such scary things about Courtney, he decided to tell the world the truth. What Is it this an authentic thing? And is it
Yeah,
true that she inherited his musical rights that were worth like
yes.
hundreds of millions?
Yeah. Now, Tom Grant is that private investigator, and he's a former Los Angeles County police officer. So he knows his stuff. He's a good investigator. And I think he did great work in uncovering so much evidence that Courtney Love was involved in her husband's death. The only things he ignores is why it was so covered up. I mean, this is an internationally, celebrated musician. He's arguably the most influential guy in the world at the time of his death. He was beloved around the world, and there was huge, news coverage around the world on him when he died. So when police covered all the evidence he came up with, when they covered it up, I don't know why he didn't say, well, maybe someone with a higher authority led them to cover it up. Now Kurt Cobain's FBI file has just come out, and they pretend like the FBI pretends like they couldn't have investigated it because there was no one crossed state lines to commit a federal to break a federal law, but that's not true because a guy named Eldon Hoke, says in the film Nick Broomfield's Kurt and Courtney, that Courtney Love came from Seattle, Washington to Los Angeles, California, where he worked, offered him $50,000 to kill Kurt Cobain. He was an alcoholic and he needed money, and so he accepted the offer. But then when he was on tour with his band, and when she came to give him the money to follow through with the job, he wasn't there. And his owner, store owner, said, they witnessed this and said, yes, she got really pissed off. She ended up giving it to another guy, a guy named Alan Wrench. So here is this guy saying this on film, and the FBI knows, got letters saying, well, look at Kurt and Courtney, you got all this evidence, and they pretend like nobody crossed state lines to commit to break a federal law when obviously they did. And so this Eldon Hook passed 2 polygraph tests on the one film, one Unsolved Mysteries TV show from the top polygrapher in the country, and so this is just, and then he dies several days after saying it on film for Nick Broomfield and Kurt and Courtney. And the last person seen him with is the guy he ended up saying that killed Kurt Cobain, Alan Wrench. So, and the FBI doesn't investigate any of this, so it's just some of the massive evidence that, yes, sadly enough, Kurt Cobain was murdered. And he was murdered because there was a blood test on him in Rome when he was overdosed and went to the hospital. The overdose was with Courtney Love's sleep medicine, Rohypnol, also known as roofies. Roofies, right? That make you lose your memory for what happened. So it's the best evidence is that he was divorcing her. They had a prenuptial agreement. She roofied him with her medication that she got from England, because it's legal in England. It's not legal in the United States, roofies, Rohypnol. And so, and then when he ended up going into a coma but didn't die, they basically found that he actually wasn't using heroin at that time, wasn't using any drugs. He had no illicit substances in his system. And now they pretend like he died because he was a heroin addict who was so depressed. So, that's just some of the massive evidence that, yeah, he was murdered, and it was partly at U.S. intelligence hands.